Just tell us a little bit about yourself and give us your campaign message. And you'll have about 10 minutes to do that. We don't know if Kola will show up, but we're prepared to provide him with the 10 minutes as well. So after that, we can take some questions. We may be streaming live now, so we'll get started in a moment.
Martin,
I sent you my intro earlier today, right? You got the short bio remarks?
I did.
Okay.
We are live, everybody. We are live.
Great.
Give me a few minutes to share the stream, if you could.
Okay.
The awkward moment.
The awkward moment. Here's this. Okay. All right, it's posted. You may begin.
Okay, so people should see that in their events, in their Facebook events. See the link. Okay, well, good evening. Welcome to this evening's Meet the Candidates event. I am Martin Murray, Secretary of the Democratic Committee in the town of Bow. And joining Bow as organizers of tonight's event are the Democratic committees in the towns of Bedford and Auburn. So the primary election is fast approaching. In fact, it's 3 weeks from tonight, September 8th. So tonight, we're focused on the Office of Executive Council, District 4. The seat is currently held by Republican Ted Gatsas. We are focused on the 3 Democratic candidates who are campaigning to be the Democratic challenger in the general election. And those 3 candidates are, according to my absentee ballot that I picked up in order, Mark McKenzie, Kola Adewami, and Jerome Duvall. So this is how it's going to work tonight. We want to hear questions from our viewers, from you in the audience. You are viewing this via YouTube. And the way to ask a question is to enter it into the chat feature. So we're going to give each candidate about 10 minutes to introduce himself to us. Following that, we should have plenty of time for questions. Kola Adewami has not yet joined us. We're hoping he will. And as soon as he does, we'll include him. But let's start off again with the order on the ballot. Mark McKenzie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it must be busy with just a couple of weeks left, and you have quite a wide district geographically and quite diverse that all the candidates are trying to cover. So a lot going on, a lot on your plate. Take a couple of minutes, Mark, to tell us something about you and what this office means to you and why you're running.
Sure. Thank you very much, Martin. And to all the people who are on the call, thank you for joining this. This is the only way we can communicate right now with a lot of people. So let me say a little bit about myself. I am Mark McKenzie. I was a city firefighter in Manchester for 27 years. I made a commitment a long time ago when I was young that I wanted to spend my career in community service. One of the things that appealed to me from the time I was a little person was the fire service, as it does for many. But I pursued it, and I had a terrific career in the city of Manchester for 27 years, and retired as a city captain out of Manchester. In part, it also, as part of that whole experience, I was a representative for the firefighters, elected a number of times by city firefighters to represent them at the bargaining table and in the state legislature, which I did for a number of years, having negotiated collective bargaining agreements and grievances and arbitrations over the course of the years. In addition, I was elected to be the secretary treasurer and the legislative agent for the professional firefighters. And also in 1989, I was elected as the president of the New Hampshire AFL-CIO, which is the largest labor organization in the state, and served for more than 25 years, the longest serving state fed president in the United States. Now, what does all that mean? Let me boil down what my career really has been about. Is not only about public service, but it's a sense of responsibility that I have always had, having grown up in the Catholic community, in a large Italian family. It really was about taking care of each other and understanding that you had a responsibility to each other. In the labor movement, we call that term solidarity. And really what it means is we are bound together in so many ways. So the fire service was a way to do that. The AFL-CIO was a way to make that commitment in community service. So my whole life, my whole adult life, more than 45 years, has really been focused on the idea that I can use my energy and my talent and the leadership skills that I have to be able to come to help people move from one place to the other. I did it at the collecting bargaining table. I did it in the legislature. I was an elected state representative and served in the House Labor Committee, but I was also a legislative agent and a lobbyist and an advocate for working families for a number of years. If you look at the labor books, and I'm not going to go through it, there is a whole bunch of things that I worked on over the course of the years. Because this is the day of the 100th anniversary and 19th Amendment, let me say one of the things that I am very proud of is having written the equal pay bill in my office towards the end of my career with the AFL-CIO. Worked it in the legislature, we got the thing passed, and when Maggie Hassan signed the bill, she turned around and handed me the pen, one of the pens that actually signed the legislation. So these are the kinds of things that I've done over the course of my career. Now, what do I bring to the Executive Council? I bring a great deal of experience in the public sector, in the legislative arena, in drafting legislation and reading legislation. And also I've done a great deal of work in terms of contracting, reading contracts and understanding what contracts say. I have looked at the schedule of the Executive Council. It is a hefty lift. There's no question about it. I've got some ideas, and as we go through this, some ideas of how we might work that schedule out a little bit better. But I think I bring that sense of that skill. But more importantly, what I bring to that is a sense of you see it behind me, this concept of liberty and justice, the idea that people should be treated with dignity and respect. And also the idea that government should be there to work for all the people and not just for a few people, but really it's the responsibility of government to be there for all the people that they govern. And too often, and there's examples of it in this government, too often people are there serving in commissioners' roles and serving not for the benefit of all the people, but to service a political agenda, which I absolutely oppose. So these are some of the things that I've been working on, and really my adult life has been committed to. Just so you know, I have 2 sons, 4 grandchildren. One was just born a couple of days ago. So I grew up they grew up in Manchester. They went public schools, and they had a great experience in the city of Manchester. So I'm proud of them. I'm proud of my record. I'm interested in participating. I think I've got the skill set to do this. Served on boards and commissions for a number of different governors over the course of the years. So I don't know, Martin, I don't want to overextend my time. So I'll leave it right there.
Sure, you're right on time. I appreciate that, Mark. It sounds like you're a long-time resident of District 4, as is our candidate, Jerome Duvall. I was interested, Jerome, in glancing at your bio that I guess you're a native of District 4 and also the youngest of 11 children. Amazing. I'm one of 8, but I thought that was a lot, but 11. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Jerome, and why you want this office and what your vision is for it if elected.
Well, hello to my fellow Democrats of Bow, Auburn, and Bedford. Tonight I'm in Bedford. Actually, I'm at the son of my son's house here on Liberty Hill, and his wife Kate, and my two grandchildren, Everett, who's age 4, and my granddaughter, who's about 9 months old now. So thank you to those of you who have organized this event. I think it's really important, especially during these challenging, unprecedented times. No one could have imagined times like this going into 2020. As I looked at the new year, I wasn't planning to be on the ballot. I'll just be honest with you about that. I was quite satisfied supporting the candidacy of a hardworking select woman from Goffstown, Kelly Boyer, for the position of executive counselor. If not for the effects of COVID-19, it was Kelly who had invested energy and had put together a grassroots campaign aimed at defeating the Republican incumbent, offering a fresh perspective rather than the same old bully style of politics from a career politician we see in Ted Gatsas. I know, I served with him when I was on the Board of Aldermen with the city of Manchester. I know how he acts. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Kelly Boyer's efforts that saw tremendous possibility and thank her for the counsel she has provided me along the way. I will not forget it. When Kelly abruptly ended her campaign, I received calls to pick up where she left off. And after carefully weighing the hefty responsibilities of being a counselor, I decided to move from the sidelines as an observer and instead offer voters the chance for meaningful, thoughtful representation in Concord. I decided District 4 was deserving of representation in the likes of Councilor Chris Pappas, himself a unifier, not a divider, much like we see in the incumbent counselor. So here's what I offer residents of District 4. It's my start of what I call a 6-point platform. 1, first and foremost, to be a good listener. If Trump's election taught us anything, it's that there are many people who feel they are left unheard and unrepresented. I believe Democrats have a tremendous responsibility to respond and fill more of a need and to deliver on whatever it is they promise. Let me be candid with you. I am never going to be the smartest person in the room, but I will always strive to be the best listener, and I will learn. 2, the cornerstone of the successful counselor member's position should be that of providing constituent services across the district. One of the mentors I will use is that of longtime Republican counselor, Ray Burton. Ray had the hallmark reputation of providing constituent services unmatched by anyone. The voters gave him re-election for decades. Make no mistake, I'm a loyal Democrat, committed to ideals that we all cherish. But never will that cloud my better judgment or stand in the way of me looking to create openings to get what's most important to be done for the residents of District 4, even if it means working cooperatively with those from across the aisle. 3, I will stand with Planned Parenthood as they provide essential health care for women across New Hampshire in their efforts against unwanted pregnancies, as a leader in the fight for cancer prevention, and other causes that promote women's health. That's a must. 4, recently we celebrated the 100th year anniversary of a woman's right to vote. It took progressives over 100 years to experience success. How long must it take to bring far greater diversity to our justice system here in New Hampshire? For 144 years, New Hampshire has appointed all but 3 women to the Supreme Court. Today, just 1 of 5 justices is a woman. Superior Court, not much better. Just 6 of the 21 sitting judges are female. The Executive Council has the constitutional authority to vote on judicial nominees put forth by the governor. I pledge to use every ounce of that weight to create pathways to foster women coming forward and available to serve the courts. If it means voting against nominees until we see progress, I will be prepared to do so. 5, the governor has decided to exclude council member participation in spending $1.25 billion in COVID relief aid to New Hampshire residents. District 4 deserved a louder voice, and residents deserve to be informed of what I think is an abuse of power. This isn't a partisan issue. Rather, it's one of ethics. I will always fight for transparency in government It's what I do day to day when I represent my clients in the real estate business. And 6, I said I'm not the smartest person in the room. But what I can promise you is that I will seek out the smartest people I know to serve as my advisors as serious decisions are made on your behalf. It's why I am both humbled and grateful to count as my most ardent supporters Greg Chinoweth, the nominee for this post 2 years ago, a highly successful entrepreneur, and Southern New Hampshire Planning Director David Priest, plaintiff lawyer Maureen Raish Manning, and former head of Easter Sales Christine McMahon. Countless talented people across the district can be trusted to keep me informed, and I will call on them readily to give me an input and best advice so I can best serve you. And I hope to serve in this way as your counselor.
Great, thank you, Jerome.
Thank you.
I'm not certain whether or not we have our third candidate, Kola. We were joined by someone there. Is that Jerome? Is that you? There's the name of Ron.
The name is Ron
Ron Jeffrey.
Jeffrey. I'm not sure if that is him or not. I let him in.
It is me.
It is.
Thank you.
Welcome.
That's me with the
That's
NACA symbol right there.
So that's
Wonderful.
you are Kola?
Pardon me?
Am I speaking with Kola?
No, my name Ron.
No,
Okay.
So
I don't
I
think
think we
Ron-
have the
I think-
wrong person.
Yeah, I think you're in the wrong meeting, Ron.
No, I am not. I came in here to listen to the Democratic Executive Council candidates in
Yeah.
District 4,
Okay.
which I am part of.
Oh,
I live in Auburn.
okay.
No,
We have this live streaming on the internet. I'm not exactly sure how you got the Zoom link. We were trying to get the candidates only in here.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll mute myself and you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So it looks like Kola is not here. So shall we go on with the Q&As?
sure. Mark, you heard Jerome's 6 points that he made. Was there anything there that jumped out to you in terms of that differentiates him from you? Anything you'd like to point out? Oh, you're muted. Mark, I believe you're muted.
Is that any better? I don't know what's going on here.
Yes,
I'm not
go-
muted. We all set?
Go ahead.
Great.
We're all
Okay.
set. Go ahead.
So let me say, I happen to agree with some of the things that Jerome said. I think the governor is out of control in terms of the spending that appears in the executive council as informational, spending thousands and thousands of dollars, millions of dollars actually. And there's some question about who's getting that money. There's been a number of reports that have gone out. But let me say this, the way I've looked at the executive council agenda more than once, more recently the other day, and quite frankly, here's what I think needs to be done. And one suggestion that I would make: number one, I think that there is a mishmash of contract work that's being done. You can't do it that way. You have to have a consistent format for identifying the various issues within contracts. And let me give you the best example I've seen of how contracts work in the state. If you go to the Department of Transportation, you can follow every single contract, and every item line by line is listed along with each bid that goes out, so that you know exactly what each bid, the lowest bid, who got the lowest bid, who was the next lowest bid, and the differential between them. That is a terrific system. And one of the reasons that's that way is because they've had to do, they work with the federal government. So streamlining the system, coming up with a consistent approach to the way the contracts are presented to the executive council, I think is really important. The other thing that what I noticed, and just shut me off if I'm saying too long, but the other thing I noticed is I don't see any evidence, quite frankly, of any time when the executive council has brought people back. Now, you can't bring everybody back that goes before the council, But the best, any contract that you have to have some accountability. So I, as a council, would like to know, having approved a contract worth thousands of dollars, how did you do? So I think that's important to have that kind of a test done once in a while. The other thing, and the council may not have a lot of control over this because the governor sets the agendas. The council is paid over $16,000. They get between $6,000 and $9,000 in expenses. The legislature gets $100 a year. I think there's a little room in there to have the council meet more often, to deal with some of this stuff, so they have the opportunity to drill down into some of these particular issues. And the other thing I would say that I have said this on more than one occasion, as somebody who's come from the public sector, that you can have all the opinions that you want as a private citizen. But once you make the commitment to be in a leadership position as a commissioner, whether it be of education or health and human services, whatever the case may be, you leave your politics at the door. That's not, when you make that transition, when you go to there, your job is an advocate for the people. That's what your job is. And the legislature makes the policy, the commissioners and other people are there to administer the policy in a fair, even-handed way. And I don't want an advocate to be in a department head, and one of the things that I'd look for. I don't want people saying I am standing in this position because it could potentially get in your way. So that's one of the ways that I would vet people. And I think we've run into this. We're going to run into this with the Commissioner of Education. We've run into it with the judge when they tried to put the Attorney General's position. So I think that these are some of the things that I would look at. So.
Well, let's follow up on that a little bit. Jerome, speaking of politics, what about not so much the nominees who appear in front of you, but the people around the table, the governor and the 5 counselors? Has that process become too political?
I think at times it has a tendency of being done so. And that's why I referenced that in my opening statement, because I'm a big believer in, once you're elected and you're serving with a group of other individuals, you treat each other with a certain level of respect. They're elected by the same pool of voters, oftentimes. So I think you go in and you take off one hat and you put on another. You take off your partisan hat and you put on your good governance hat. And that's how I've always operated and behaved when I've been in elected positions. When I was on the school board years ago in the 1980s, and then more recently than that, as on the board of mayor and alderman. In fact, I pride myself in the fact that we didn't get along on every issue, but I served with the Republican mayor of Manchester, Frank Ginta, who was quite partisan himself. But in order to affect change, in order to get things done on my agenda on behalf of my constituents that I represented, well, it was important that I had access to the mayor's office. And it was important that I got along with some of his Republican colleagues on the board. So, you have to have thick-skinned. You can't hold grudges. I think it's important that at the end of a meeting, if you've disagreed with your colleagues, that you're able to still chat about the Red Sox. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. And I think that's when government works best. And I pride myself in reaching across the table and being much more of a pragmatist. I think the incumbent counselor, has a history of holding grudges. I served with them, and I understand the bullish ways that he has of taking on issues, but not just taking on issues, taking on people personally. It doesn't do government any good, and I don't think it's good for. I don't think it would be good for District 4. So, yeah, I think, and I've said that if Governor Sununu is reelected, that wouldn't be my preference, of course, but I'm going to have to roll up my sleeves and work with him in order to affect change that I think is important for District 4 residents.
Can I just
Mark,
respond real quick to that?
absolutely.
I take no exception to him, but his, here's what just so you understand what my record is. I was a legislative agent for many, many years in the New Hampshire legislature. I worked with Democrats and Republican governors and legislators, and we got things done in those environments because I know how to work with across the aisle with a whole lot of people. But let me say this, that you have to come at this as a person who is representing people. You have to have a clear sense of what it is you stand for. and what it is that you are trying to accomplish and what it is that the people want. Now, I don't mind working with other people. And I've done that. I've done it at the bargaining table. You don't settle contracts without working with other people. But they have to show some respect to you in the process of governing. And the evidence right now is that there is not that kind of respect that's being shown. And that disrespect is spilling out into other areas of the government. For instance, the State Employees Association has yet to get a collective bargaining agreement. Now, the governor is holding this stuff up. It's an enormously disrespectful to the employees. And, quite frankly, I don't mind being a nice guy to the governor of New Hampshire, but I can't sit there and watch the governor of New Hampshire or any other person on the executive council disrespect the working families and workers of the state of New Hampshire. I'm not going to sit still and allow that to happen. I am who I am. I come from the labor movement. I have a long history in legislative and political work. I understand how the system works. And I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fight for the people that I represent and fight for things that are just and right.
Mark, you brought up Gordon MacDonald, the vote last year to deny his confirmation to the Supreme Court. That was a party line 3-2 vote. Might come up again if Sununu is reelected. He may be re-nominated. But let me ask you, how? My memory is that was there was not great unanimity even among the party faithful. So it was a party line vote at the table, but out in the community there seemed to be quite a lot of discussion. Not everyone was in agreement on the Democratic side. How would you have voted last year, and how would you vote next year if indeed he is nominated again? And speak, if you will, and then Jerome, to that discussion, to the dynamics there among the Democrats who are not unanimous in their feelings about what happened.
Well, I'll take this on and say this. Is I was not a member. I was not on the council. I didn't
Right.
go to the public hearings about this about the attorney. So I think if his name is going to be brought up again, then we're going to go through a process where I will be engaged in listening and questioning and taking input from a whole variety of sources. Again, I represent, if elected, I represent the people from the 4th district. I will come up with systems where people have an opportunity to weigh in on this thing. So it's hard for me that's almost looking back and making decisions. Yeah, I can't do that. I need to see the evidence in front of me and make a decision based on the evidence that I see.
Jerome,
I think it's very invaluable that we come in, once you're elected, that you're not viewed as a total partisan person. I think that you have to demonstrate that you're able to negotiate in good faith. I think it takes years to develop a good reputation so that people trust you. I've managed to do that throughout my career. I'm impressed by, I was impressed by a description that the Secretary of State's office has posted with regard to the executive council position. And the word that jumped out at me was advocate. And I'm in the business, and I've been highly successful in my business over a 14-year professional career. Managed to become president of the Greater Manchester National Board of Realtors because of that trust in me as someone who's a fair dealer, someone who does his homework. I would take immense pride in working with people in that fashion, always with a dedication to good ethics and complete transparency when dealing with people. And I think that ultimately wins you credibility, and that's how you're able to negotiate strongly and advocate for the people you represent. You have to have access. You can't just close the door on these relationships. These are other counselors sitting across the table from you who might be more than likely be of an opposing viewpoint. And you have to have some reserve in the bank, so to speak, to draw from during those critical voting times to be able to influence the decision-making process. And I've managed to do that throughout my career in a very bipartisan fashion. I pride myself in it. Listen, I was brought up in a labor family myself. with my dad being in a large family, and my dad being an FDR, during his life. That was his cherished president. So I'm a Democrat through and through. But I believe once you're elected, you've got to be an advocate for the people, and that always has to come shining through.
Okay, thanks, Jerome and Mark. We did mention that we have 3 candidates for executive council. So it looks like Kola Adewami has joined us, or is attempting to join us via Zoom on your phone. Kola, can you hear me? Kola, I can't hear you. Just make sure you're not muted. Yeah, Kola, I think we can see you, but we're not hearing you. So do what you can to gain that audio feed, and we'd like to welcome you if you can. But right now we can't hear you. We did get a question from one of the viewers for both of you, Jerome and Mark. Let's start with Mark. This is perhaps a softball for you, but some people may not understand the work of the council. Years ago, I was a reporter, and I'd sit in the council offices. I don't know if they still have those piles of paper, but every counselor had just 2-foot high stack of paper. So the question from the viewer is, I'd like to ask if the candidates understand how tedious all of the reading, research, and deliberation is for this position. Do they truly feel they can give it the time and the attention that it requires? Mark?
Well, I looked at that, and I would agree that that there is a pile of stuff that you have to go through in the course of this. But let me say how I would the work process or the flow that would go for me. First of all, I think that you've got to make sure that you have the right people in various commissioners' positions in other places that you can trust, that you have confidence with, that you have built a relationship with. That's number one. The second thing I think we do, and I mentioned it a little bit, is we have to standardize the process of contracts that go before the executive council. If take anybody, all of this information is currently out there. So you can look on the executive council website. You can look at all the contracts that they go through. None of them are the same. Every one of them, they may hit the same points and the 5 things they're supposed to hit. But as somebody who has been on boards and commissions over the course of the years, how is it that you're supposed to deal with all of that kind of information? I think that we should look at reforms that basically take that information, put it in a form that's standardized, make everybody put it in a way that we can look at it and glean from that the information that's necessary to make decisions. And so I understand that. I looked at it. I understand the council. I understand. Look, I've spent months in the New Hampshire legislature following legislations and some tedious hearings over the course of the years. So I understand the process. I know what I'm getting myself into. And I think that I come to this with an understanding of contracts, of legislatures, how things work, where they come from, so I think I bring that to the table. And I'm prepared to do it. This is going to be my job basically on the executive council. So I'm prepared to do it, and I want to do it. And I'm asking the people of this district to put me in that position.
Well, the reform issue or point you made is an interesting one. Whose responsibility would that be? Would that be the executive council itself, or the staff that services the executive council, or is it a legislative matter?
Well, I mean, no, I think the council can, the way the council is set up, the council is the executive office. There are 5 councilors, there's a governor, and we have a very unique system in New Hampshire, unlike anything in the country and probably in the world, as you can tell by the description of it. We co-manage the government. Now, the governor doesn't want to hear that, but the reality is that we do. And I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation that we get together as a council, the governor and council, and say, look, the only effective way to manage this work is to put it in a form and in a system that is easily readable and that we can understand it. Because I think not only should we understand it, but all of the voters should be able to pop onto that website and be able to read things. And again, go back to the Department of Transportation. They do the best job, I think. They lay out everything, from the stones on the ground to the equipment that they're using. There is not that kind of transparency and clarity in the other contracts. They are a mishmash of various contracts. We're at a disadvantage of a council when you have a system like that. I don't think it's fair to the council, and I don't think it's fair to the citizens of the state of New Hampshire. They deserve to have good deliberation, good decisions being made by the council.
Okay, thank you. And Jerome Duval, the original question was basically, do you know what you're getting into?
Well, let me tell you, providing constituent service is not something new to me. Back when I was on the school board in the 1980s, raising a young family, I was able to provide constituent service to a high level and still take time for the extracurricular activities like marching with teachers in protest when they were without a contract or without benefits. And so I'm going to continue that. When I was an alderman, you talk about a demanding schedule, nightly meetings, and I was on a number of committees, chaired numbers of committees, and still able to provide on the ground constituent services at the aldermanic level in the city of Manchester. I'll tell you that really prepares you well for this type of position. But when Kelly Boyer decided to end her campaign, and I got calls that people encouraged me to run, I really had to take a step back and say, okay, is this the time in my life that I'm able to balance a professional career as a real estate broker? I'm one of the top producers with Varani Realty, the Varani family out of Londonderry, and dedicate to the position what's necessary to be an effective advocate for District 4 constituents. And I came to the conclusion that I can. I didn't take it lightly, and whoever asked the question, I appreciate the question very, very much. As I said, just knowing me that I'll do my homework, and my professional career tends to dovetail pretty nicely with the demands and workload of an executive counselor. So I plan on me being an engaged counselor and one that spends a lot of time communicating throughout District 4. And I look forward to that opportunity. It would be an honor.
Thank you, Jerome. Let's stay with you for another question from another viewer, Jerome. Properly funded public schools is a high priority for me and my town. How would you use your position as executive counselor to keep an eye on public monies and ensure they are not diverted from public to private schools?
Well, I think, as we know, the legislative process starts well upstream before the budget gets to the council for us to spend the money. So I think one of the key things there is collaboration. At a recent Zoom session, we approached this, and I think first and foremost, you have to invite people to the table. You have to have an executive counselor who has the sensibility and who's got a reputation of inclusion. And I think that's first and foremost priority, and it stands in sharp contrast to the incumbent counselor we have now, and Mr. Gatsas. And I think you have to have that kind of reputation. I've spoken with a number of state legislators throughout the district, and a number of them supporting my candidacy because they know that in me, they'll have a person that they can work with to put together a plan of action to fund our educational school system as best we can. And then on the tail end, by the time it gets downstream to the executive council, to make sure that any contracts that have anything to do with the services provided our public schools, make sure that they're followed through to a T, and that we do what we can to enhance quality of public education throughout New Hampshire. And I think that's a cornerstone of what I'd be doing as executive counselor.
Okay, same question to you, Mark.
Well, I think the question of education is the funding of education is one of many problems that we have in the system in our government right now. I absolutely a strong advocate of properly funding education. I would agree that the council has has to take direction from the legislature. Who is the one that appropriates the money for these various things? So I understand that, and I understand that there are going to be a lot of things that we may not have direct control over. But let me say this: I have been an advocate for my entire life. I mean, I have represented workers, thousands of workers, for many, many years. So I understand constituent service, and you want to have constituent service, you should be in a union meeting and understand how some of this rolls out. It's a difficult thing. I understand it, but I also understand this, that I am an elected official. I'm not a manager. I'm not a commissioner. I am an elected official. And I have an obligation as an elected official to reflect the wishes, the ideas, the dreams, the hopes of the people that I represent. The governor certainly does that on a regular basis. And the executive council, as part of the executive management of the state, should have the same kind of opportunity. I'm campaigning. Nobody's going to appoint me to this job. I'm campaigning. And what I'm telling people is that if you want an advocate, if you want somebody who has a strong voice, if you want somebody who's been doing this kind of work for a long period of time, that understands how to stand up and fight for what's just and right for people, then I'm your person for this position. I am not going to sit there and allow the governor of the state of New Hampshire, and I don't care if the Democrat or Republicans try to shut us up or quiet us up or any of that thing. I'm going to stand up for the people, the 264,000 people in this district. They deserve that. And that's why we're elected as people, not appointed.
Terrific. Thank you. We have another question. Let's stay with you, Mark, for this question from a viewer. As the past few years of the Executive Council have shown, the council is a mighty check on the power of the governor and has a great responsibility to oversee more than $5 billion in state monies and contracts. What experience do you have in contract and balance sheet review that makes you perfect for this position? Mark?
Well, first of all, I have negotiated and dealt with contracts for a long period of time. So I understand the contract process. I did that as part of my responsibilities within the labor movement. I also have been involved in the legislative work for a long period of time. I understand how to read legislation. I understand the intent of legislation. I understand where, how contracts come to be, which should be based on what the legislature has said they should be based on. And I'm concerned to make sure that whole thing happens. In addition to that, I have been asked and served on a number of boards and commissions over the course of the years by both Democratic and Republican governors. People have come to me and asked me would I be part of it, part of their organization, and be somebody in a position of reviewing things, reviewing contracts, reviewing public policy, which I've done. Now, I also want to say that I have I think it's valuable during this discussion. I have an undergraduate degree from University of Franklin Pierce, and I have a graduate degree from the University of New Hampshire. So I have studied public policy both in real life in the legislative arena and also in the educational community. So I think what I bring is this set of skills that is an advocate, that understands contract, that has an educational background and a real on the ground kind of background to interpret and to be able to look at this information. But again, let me say that you can't allow somebody to manipulate you with a system that it doesn't really look like it's working very well. And we should, as executive councils, be able to go in there and say, look, I want the contract to look the same from contract A to contract B to contract C. And I'll make the decision about whether or not the aspects of that contract make sense. And I think there's a way that we can accomplish that and work on that. So.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Same question to you, Jerome. What experience do you have in contract and balance sheet review that makes you perfect for to represent the constituents of District 4?
Thank you. The Manchester School District is is the largest school districts in the state of New Hampshire. As a school board member, I was involved at a very intimate, hands-on level with budget preparation and review of contracts. I was on the principal negotiating team during my time on the Manchester School Board. As a city alderman, I was involved with in contract negotiations and creation of budgets. Patrick Long, a state representative from Manchester, big labor guy, supporter of mine. He and I worked very, very closely to present a budget during a very, very lean budget year when we were aldermen together. But I think it goes back to what I said before, and I mean it very sincerely. There are those who are much more prepared, who are willing to contribute at a level by aiding executive counselor if I'm elected, and I would rely on them as a sounding board and to work with me to best represent the interests of the district. You have to ask the tough questions. I know how to get to the information. I know with the most important parts of contracts and agreements are buried. And I would demand of department heads to give us the information necessary to make the most prudent decisions on behalf of District 4 residents. So I think it also has to do with experience and approach. And I'm not one that will shy away from digging down and getting to, as I say, the most important parts so that we make sure that our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And then someone who can articulate that message in support of whatever it is that you're advocating for. And I think I can do that because of my communication skills. And that's what matters most. Are you able to get the job done and cross the finish line on behalf of what's important to your District 4 constituents? And I would pride myself in that. And I've demonstrated over a long career, both in public service and in my profession, of being able to accomplish that as an advocate for the people.
Thank you, Jerome. We have another question from a viewer, and Jerome, let's stay with you. This really has to do with current affairs, the current times we find ourselves in. How do you envision the relationship between the council, the councilors, and the governor in emergency situation? Basically, this viewer says that they believe that Sununu went around the executive council with the pandemic's federal relief money and shut them out of many decisions. So what is your view? How do you envision that relationship between yourself and the governor in a time like this?
Well, in my opening statement, for the person who asked the question, thank you very much. In my opening statement, I made mention that I think it was a breach of the governor's authority, but most importantly, his trust issue when he didn't include the legislative body or the executive council in the distribution of the $1.25 billion in relief aid to New Hampshire because of COVID. I think that was a mistake. If I was sitting on the council, the governor would have heard from me about that. And I think that the executive council position is unique. I think that in that instance, I would have reported back to, through various channels, back to Ward 4 constituents as to what the governor was doing. I think it's okay in that instance to call him out. And I think he would have heard from me on a personal level before I went public, but certainly I would have made an issue of it. And that would have been broadcasted loud and clear. I think that's the responsibility of the executive counselor position. It is a check on the governor. And I think the governor went too far. I think, as I said, I think there was a breach. It certainly lacked transparency, that it certainly has the appearance as such. And I think that's not this is not a partisan issue, folks. This is nonpartisan. We're talking about transparency and ethics in government. And if you're going to have good governance, then you have to be in a position to make sure that you exercise fully that level of transparency. And I think the governor blew it. Let me be perfectly blunt about it. And I would have let him know it.
Mark McKenzie?
Well, let me say, I think the governor, I think that there was transparency there, but quite frankly, he didn't care. I mean, if you look where the money went, follow the money. And, don't take my word for it. Look in the newspaper. Whose hotel, got money? Who were the people within the system that got money from the governor? I think that's really, I think that's something that is inappropriate in the public sector. And also, quite frankly, all of this stuff, when you look at the way that this money was allocated, it's really not on the agenda. It's on the informational part of the agenda. In other words, you don't have anything to say about this. Now, I think at some point, you know, if you consider where the council came from in 1679, the way that the council came to be and the way it has survived is that people want a check on the governor. It is a weak governor in the state of New Hampshire. So, you know, call it what you want. Say this is an emergency and this is this. And there are times, quite frankly, when I think that we have to have somebody that's making some decisions. But with today's technology, with the ability to communicate with people, you have pretty good access to people pretty quickly. But I think there is going to be a constitutional crisis. And I think at some point, we're going to have to figure out exactly where the governor's authority stops and where the executive council's authority and how they work together. Because clearly the founders of this, from what I have read, is that they did not want a strong governor. They did not want somebody who was going to make decisions arbitrarily and without any kind of controls. And I think that they'd flip in their graves, quite frankly, if they saw what was kind of going on, with millions of dollars are going out the door without any oversight by the executive council. And so, I mean, that's the way I feel about that. I feel pretty strongly about that, actually. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. So as a reminder for our viewers, we're speaking with two of the three Democratic candidates for Executive Council District 4. We know that Kola Adewami has been trying to join us, having some technical difficulties, and we're sorry for that, and perhaps we can meet up with him again sometime. But we do have Mark McKenzie and Jerome Duvall. And gentlemen, you both seem like terrific candidates. I'm glad we have a spirited campaign. Let me ask you, I know you're going to be very polite, but what differentiates you, Mark, from Jerome, and vice versa? Why are you the one whose name I should check off on my absentee ballot in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, hopefully we get it. I mean, the post office gets to deliver it.
I'm going to hand deliver it to my town clerk. So
yeah, no
sweat.
Look, I've known Jerome for a long time. I've seen him in action in, you know, the school board and the alderman. And I understand this is not a personality thing between, at least I don't see it that way. I just think I bring a set of skills that is maybe a little bit different. I think I have a long history of advocacy for people. I've represented thousands and thousands of workers over the course of the years. The AFL-CIO at one point was about 35,000 people and 260 different unions that I represented. I represented people at the, in the legislature when I was elected legislator. I've done a great deal of work in the legislature. I've spent 25, 30, 35 years as an advocate in the legislature, testifying, drafting legislation and moving things forward. And I think that I come to this with an understanding of the nature of the work, the how difficult this can be. And also I have the time to be able to do this at this point in my life. So I think I bring, I'm different. I'm a different person. He doesn't need me to tell him that. He'll tell you himself. But I think I bring a certain, I'm known for certain things. I'm known as a spirited guy. I'm known as somebody who stands up for what they think is right and what people want. And I'm prepared to do that again. Quite frankly, I look at the state employees, what's going on at the state employees, how they have been treated. And I've met with the state police. I've met with state employees. And you're going to see some things roll out over the next couple of days in terms of their support for my candidacy. I think it's disrespectful the way they're treated. I'm going to stand up and say that, and I think that things are unjust. And that's been my record. I have been an advocate for a long time, stood on a lot of picket lines, been on a lot of soapboxes over the course of the years, addressed thousands of people. And I know how to be a decent, tough advocate for people that I represent.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Jerome?
You know, if I learned anything from the time I was just a young boy, one of the youngest in a family of 11, I'll tell you, you have to advocate for yourself and you have to figure out how to work with your older siblings in order to affect change, especially at the dinner table.
Sure.
But sincerely, my whole life has been about building consensus, working with others of varying opinions in order to affect change. And that's what it's all about. And if I'm not able to do that, then I will be a failure as your executive counselor. So I bring that high standard, that skill set to the office of the council. And I think that's really important to you out there who are listening to this forum tonight. You know, I've prided myself in always, you know, pursuing the highest ethical standards and transparency in whatever position I've held. I do it in my business day to day as a matter of business practice. That's why I was elected president of the Greater Manchester National Board of Realtors. That's why I was so successful when I was on the board of directors at Catholic Medical Center, when I served as their treasurer. And I just know how to work with people extremely well. I'd say that's a strong asset that I have. My role is not to just simply bang my fist on the table or look for a headline. That's not how I view it. And that's why I mentioned a mentor that I would have in Ray Burton, because I distinctly remember being impressed as a young Democrat in this Republican counselor from the North Country, who even got back to me in Manchester when he was representing the North Council District. He returned my phone calls when we had an issue down here in the southern part of the state. And I was always impressed by that. He never asked what my party affiliation was. He didn't care. If you were wanting to get something done for New Hampshire residents, he was in your camp. And that's the kind of reputation I'd like to build as an executive counselor, frankly. And I mean that sincerely. I'm not the brightest guy in the room, but there's so many bright people out there that have that are supporting my candidacy enthusiastically. And I just I'm so impressed by the skill set, the varied backgrounds, and they're such good thinkers, well-intended, and they have a place in government to participate. And I think an executive counselor provides them that opportunity to step off the sidelines and to help. And I would rely on that, not only with people that are supporting me, obviously, but there's so many countless other people that are ready to serve. And I would foster that opportunity. And especially, and again, going back to my original statement, we need to create pathways of opportunity. And our judicial system, for which the Executive Council plays a significant role, is not doing the job. We need a new pathway to encourage diversity on the bench at the Supreme Court level and the Superior Court level. Is an imbalance between white men and everyone else. And they've controlled it for too long. It's time to bring in people with varied backgrounds, both racial diversity. Certainly women deserve a place in our judicial court system. So we need someone who's a collaborator, a communicator, who's trusted, and who can work on creating those pathways to change. And I think I could be an effective counselor in that way.
Great, thank you, Jerome.
Let me just
I
note
think
one thing.
those two.
Let me just
Go
note
ahead.
one thing, that the, just so we're clear, I agree. But we don't appoint judges. The governor appoints the judges. And it's up to you're going to have, this is a fight they had before, and this is a fight we're going to have again. I absolutely agree that we need diversity on the bench, and we need to bring more people into it. But in the end, it's really the governor's responsibility to bring those names forward. And that's when, we're going to elect the governor here very shortly. And there are Democrats that are running for that office. And if you're concerned about those kinds of things, you better start thinking about what the governor's responsibility is in that. And finally, let me say, in terms of working with people, I've worked with a whole lot of people over the course of the years. You don't beat right to work 17 times by not working with people across the aisle. Sorry, Jerome.
Okay, go ahead, Jerome.
Yeah, Mark, just to be clear, we know the governor is in the position of that constitutional authority to bring the names in for nominees to the judicial bench. What I'm suggesting, though, is that it's time we think outside the box. And if you have credibility in the eyes of a sitting governor, you can be a lot more effective. I don't think it's too much to ask of an executive council to be a little bit more creative and to think a little bit further down the road. And if you present change and you go back to your constituents and get their support, change will happen. Like I said, it took over 100 years of progressive movement in order for the woman to get the right to vote. We need to start doing a better job setting our sights on the future and how we create pathways with less resistance to get the best diversity in the bench. Put the governor in the position. And if we have to, vote no on nominees if it's another white male. Now, again, qualifications are important. We all know that. Let's agree on that. I'm not disputing that fact, but there's a way that we can promote and create better adversity on the bench. And that was my point.
Great. Thank you both very much. And the sun is set in beautiful Bedford, so that is
Yes.
one of our signals that our time is up. I want to thank Mark McKenzie and Jerome Duvall, as well as third candidate, Kola Adewami. They're all running for the to be the challenger in the general election for Executive Council, District 4. So our thanks to our organizing committees, the Democratic committees in Auburn, Bedford, and Bow. The primary, Democratic primary, is September 8th, 3 weeks from now. So get your absentee ballot or be prepared to safely vote at your poll. It's 3 weeks away. Be sure to vote and have a good night. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
now.
Thank you, Mark.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
you.
Bye, Jerome.
Bye-bye.